Okay, guys, welcome to the show. This is Pizza Cultura, part of the Pizza Club Network. I'm one of your hosts, Tom, along with our resident pizza historian, Peter Regas, today. Yeah, we've got a bit of a mix for you today, some lighthearted stuff with a little bit of Gordon Ramsay-focused banter, and then a wider discussion about high-end pizza and kind of pizza economics and just a general chit-chat. Okay, on with the show. So regarding the title, for those who don't know, I think most people in the UK are aware of it now, but Gordon Ramsay has opened up a kind of international chain of pizzerias. I think he's got one that's opening in DC soon, or has opened, and then there was talk about one opening in New York, which would be a bold move, but I don't know if that's still due to happen. So it's, I mean, the name is Gordon Ramsay Street Pizza, which is a little bit strange. I'm not sure how or why it's street pizza, because it's a decidedly sit-down pizza joint rather than a grab and go. Now, the quality of the pizza, and this is, the kind of tongue-in-cheek jab at Gordon Ramsay, is perfectly inoffensive by London standards, which is to say it's massively middling, but it's not horrendously bad. It's not where I choose to go. There are some fantastic places in London now, not to mention a whole host of, every neighborhood pretty much these days has a good Neapolitan place somewhere nearby. So that's the clickbaity thing in the title. This isn't really a discussion of his pizza places, except to kind of tee up the fact that there's been a trend of high-end pizza places opening in New York and London and throughout the US. And so this is going to be more of a discussion about the economics, and the difference in price points and whether you're actually getting better value for money in some of the more salubrious high-end looking places. And especially the kind of price of an average margarita in London or New York compared to, say, Naples. And Peter, I know that was a kind of particular kind of bee you had in your bonnet about the economics, particularly I think versus Naples.
Yeah, I was curious as to why there's a difference. And the first thought, obviously, is the economics of having a pizzeria in Naples, which is radically different than New York or Chicago. But I'm not so sure that explains the whole thing. I'm not so sure how much of it is cultural in terms of who's the actual consumer. So if you were to consume a Neapolitan pizza in Chicago, you're coming from a sort of class, actually, of type of person. It's usually a sit down, and you're going to get probably some wine or a salad, and it's going to be expensive. So almost inherently, you're already committing to an expensive meal. Whereas in Naples, you could not even sit down, right? You're just going to be handed a wrapper with a folded
pizza portafolio.
pizza. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's just radically different. And of course, the history
that is actual street food, Gordon Ramsay, right. FYI.
Well,
yeah.
Absolutely. But that, as you know, we have the slice in New York and Chicago doesn't, I mean, you can find it, but really doesn't have a slice culture at all. So it is interesting.
That's because it's too cold.
Yeah, well, no.
I'm joking.
Right. But I mean, that just goes, I mean, how much of this is actual sort of like historical momentum of this is the way that our grandfathers did it, and we're going to do it the same way, and don't break the mold. But I just wonder if there's a space for a pizza portfolio in New York or in Chicago, or some sort of fried,
So in Chicago, I mean, Spaccanapoli is in Chicago, right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if it was just for that one episode of the Barstool Guys review where he made him a pizza portafolio, but like he obviously, my understanding was that is something they kind of offer. Like if you want to grab and go, they'll do you a pizza portafolio.
Well, my experience with Spacca is, as of a few years ago, they really discouraged the takeout orders. They want you to have it there, just because the classic thing is.
Sure.
I think they're absolutely right. But just as an example, so Pepe told us in between the week that a margarita in Naples is still between €5 and €6. Yeah. So you mark that up about it's 10% or so to get the dollar. And the comparison to Spacca, it's 15. Spacca, it's 18.
It's night and day. Yeah, it's a night and day difference. And like you can't really, I mean, even in like the kind of comparison in the US would be the Subway slice, as in, it's marked to the price of a Subway fare, and that's kind of why it's always stayed in that ballpark. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, if you were to charge people in Naples the price for a regular margherita, that people in New York or London, I mean, they'd lose their mind. The one, parenthetical to that, I'm not sure how much a pizza at Pepe and Grande costs. I'm assuming that's significantly more. It's
Hmm.
further out of the city. It's a white
Right.
tablecloth plate. It has all these accolades. It's a shame Pepe isn't here, because I'm assuming he'd know the price. But yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be humble, cheap food.
It's one of those things. I suspect there's something more to the story, that there's not just the economics of what you would think on the top line and say there's actually something more in terms of the demography of your consumer and what they can afford. And
Yeah.
so in
Well,
Chicago, well, I was just saying in Chicago, it would be a major struggle, I think, to get certain neighborhoods invest or certain neighborhoods saying, "Oh, I want a margarita." I just don't think that's even on the radar, and it would be a struggle to, I think, get them involved in a sit down place. It just wouldn't, why do that?
mm.
So um, maybe it's just the
But that's not the price point putting them off so much as it is just the entire kind of experiential factor, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
It's a matter of taste and what they
Yeah.
appreciate and have learned. It gets to the old thing: what in taste is actually learned and what is actually objectively true. And I suspect a lot of it is learned behavior. And
Yeah.
so if your
It's
experience
societal
has always
conditioning.
been
Yeah.
right, if your experience has always been thin crust Chicago style tavern or whatever, to have a margarita in that type of style is radically different, as
Mm.
we've talked about, not just in
Well, I mean,
crust but in flavor.
it was the same kind of culture shock as went on in New York when the wave of Neapolitans came across, and people were used to paying like $2.75, $3 for a slice, and all of a sudden you're being asked to pay $15 in a nice place that has candles. And there was the whole kind of cultural ignorance about, oh, why is this floppy? Why is it wet? And that was
It's
one
burned
thing.
too,
But
right?
yeah, but I
Hmm.
mean, the price point was what they gawked at. And I mean, I don't know how much that played into this, but that Roberto Caporuscio Keste did like a pizza popolare thing.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
so for those who don't know, in his original spot on Bleecker Street,
Bleecker, yeah.
he had this thing, Pizza Popolare, where he'd marked the price to how much you pay in Naples, which at the time was, maybe $5 or something. So if you just wanted one of the classics, it was Margherita, Marinar, and maybe like a Cosacca, or I don't know. But like the three of the classics were pegged at $5 or $5.50. And it was such a fantastic deal. And the ethos behind it was beautiful. It was, look, pizza is kind of traditionally peasant food, and we want people people in New York to be able to come and try a really legit high quality Neapolitan for the price that people are almost all people, obviously some just unfortunately wouldn't be, but almost all people would be able to stretch to $5 for a pizza. So yeah, I mean it yeah, I mean the economics have to, are definitely part of what's going to appeal or deter.
Right. And as he is now, even without that special promotion, he's at $15. I think I just
Mm.
checked, maybe a little bit
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
And pizza una napolitana is at 25 for a margarita. So there's quite a bit of a spread there.
that's a big range. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger of a pie, but still, I mean, that's
yeah. I mean, I
pretty.
think I think the from memory, like the neighborhood pizza joints, the neighborhood Neapolitans like Sotto Casa and even Motorino, I think you were paying in that kind of like $15 range for a margarita, and then ratchet it up depending on the ingredients. But yeah, I mean, it's a big difference, between just grabbing. But then you would establish the comparables. Are you talking about a slice versus a small 10-inch Neapolitan, or are you talking about an entire kind of 16 to 18-inch New York pizza versus a small? So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what the accurate comparables are.
I mean, some of this can be just to break it down into simpler terms. Is it somewhat attributable to the fact that, say, New York, and if you back up, Naples, is a street food because they don't really have cars to the extent that you do in Chicago, and it's just the space and the geography of the city, in where Chicago, basically you drive there and you sit down and you have a whole pie. Whereas in New York, you know the situation there.
Yeah,
That is not uncommon for, the slice to be the food, as opposed to um, any other city, I think, in America. That is the city that has the slice
yeah.
for their go-to pizza. And I think that's pretty good value, actually, because I don't know about you, but when you go to a slice shop, are you going for a meal, and do you get two, or do you just get one?
It's the Italian version of the dirty water dog, from Sabret's. You get a nasty hot dog, or you get an most of the time a nicer quality kind of pizza. I mean, obviously the dollar slice, it's a range. I mean, and to that point, I can't remember when this was the price point there, but $5.50 for a slice, even back when Dom, rest in peace, was still at the helm. And people would lose their mind over it. Then they try it and they'd be like, okay, this is a different kettle of fish. Like, I understand why this one is 5.50 or 5.75 for a slice, whereas that one over there is only $3. I can see the value added. But yeah, I mean, I guess that goes back to what you were saying about preconceptions. People have a kind of comfort zone that they're used to in terms of price, in terms of culinary experience, and any deviation from that kind of knocks them off kilter a little bit. Um,
Yeah, when you mentioned Defara, if you went there, which I think the first time I went there was 2006 or seven, and then that period of time was when it was a little bit right after he first broke out, but that was almost going there for theater. It wasn't, I mean, it
yeah,
was about the
yeah.
slice, but I was there literally, like,
To
I
see
mean, I
the
hate to say it, like
yeah, yeah,
1 or 2 hours, and you were just watching the guy, and everyone
yeah,
else was
yeah,
just sort of like amazed at this guy.
yeah.
Um, the other thing that I think is striking is how much, and this was particular to Chicago, but I suspect in other cities too, how much the categorization of a pizza has changed from. I wish I knew better in Naples whether, how much it really was to tide you over between meals, so it was like a little bit of a snack food. Whereas in Chicago, the predominance of the toppings, even on a tavern style or a thin crust, which is supposed to be not that heavy, Chicago's so focused on toppings that I think it changed the food substantially.
Yeah, I mean, are you just to check? You're talking thin
Oh,
or
thin.
deep?
Yeah.
Thin.
So
Yeah.
throw out all the pan stuff. Just talk about thin crust,
Okay.
or what they now say tavern style. Just in the way. So we were talking before about this, that if you had a margarita, it's such a radically different. Not forget about the crust, just the taste of it and the
Hmm.
prominence of the tomatoes compared to a typical tavern style. It's just a different taste.
Yeah.
And I think that type of thin crust tavern style pizza, it needs to have a topping. And that's why sausage is so prominent in Chicago. And without it, it's almost as though you're not really having the proper
Yeah. I
type
mean,
of
I've
pizza.
I've never. I mean, I guess it must exist, but whenever I've seen anyone talking about tavern style, it's always been loaded in sausage and maybe sausage and peppers. I mean, the only one exception to that, and this is where that's my go-to move at Emmett's in New York, is their version of the margarita. I think it's called something different, but it's a tavern style with margarita on top, and that's fantastic. But I do kind of feel like if you're going to do something, do it properly. And the way to do Chicago tavern or Chicago thin, whatever people want to call it properly, is loaded in sausage.
Well, that and cheese
Hmm.
to the subtraction of the sauce. So we sort of change it in a word to a cheese pie from a tomato pie, which is
I mean, just on the sauce point, um, what I mean, it's there, right? Is it just that
it's
it's kind
definitely
of
there, but
it's
it's
too
below the
thinly
cheese.
there? Ye-
It just gets lost in the shuffle a bit. I mean,
okay.
it is there, and to varying degrees, you can get some other old school shops that do put a higher
The
proportion of
heavier
sauce.
saucing.
But then the downside, of course, is the construction of it. This cheese can slide right off the sauce.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
do you put the sauce on top of the cheese? This is the debate of the.
Well, I mean, this goes back to the thing that we were chatting about just before before Michael hit record, was sauce and top versus sauce on the bottom. I mean, I am massively and will die on this hill. I am team sauce and top. You know, as in, I could very happily have a pizza that was pure sauce, as can all of Italy. You know, the marinara. You know, that's because there's something beautiful about bread and tomato together. Whereas I don't think I'd happily have a pizza that was just cheese and nothing else. Like, it needs something else. So yeah, team sauce on top for me all the way.
I would love to disagree with you because I like to see you mad or something, but no, I agree too. I like the sauce on top. I think it works. I also think that it's visually stunning to see the pie come out and that vapor of water vapor just like steaming throughout. It's really something to see when it comes out, and you don't get the same effect if you have cheese.
Obviously, you know, there's a way to kind of have the best of both worlds. You know, you can intersperse it, but yeah, if I have to, if it's kind of put to me as a binary proposition, definitely sauce and top. I love getting that sweet hit of, you know, the acidity of the tomato first, and then into the kind of salty goodness of the cheese, rather than just cheese and then there's some sauce under there. But I mean, like, this is all kind of new stuff in the UK. Like, if you talk to someone about an upside down, or if you talk to someone about, are you team sauce and top, they look at you like you've had a stroke or something. Most of them don't really know what you're talking about. But yeah, in the US, it's, you know, it's a bone of contention.
I mean, it does go to show that there is still space there for someone to explore. I mean, you don't have to cook the whole thing with the sauce on top. You can put that halfway in, and you can take it out. But then, of course, this gets into the workflow and how practical it is for an operator to actually do that. But certainly, you can do that at home. And I mean, all these things are still out there, and it's just a wonder. It could be a new trend, perhaps.
Do you guys in Chicago?
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Plant that flag. I was gonna say, in Chicago, do you guys do a cooked down sauce like a Sicilian, or is it just a Neapolitan style? So just ground tomatoes with some salt and olive oil?
It varies. It does vary. I think on some of the old schools, I'm trying to remember. I shouldn't speculate. It's heavily seasoned. I know that. So it's not just a puree of tomato, but they do cook it for 13 minutes. So I don't think they need to pre-cook it. And certainly, but on the Sicilians traditionally, and this is not Chicago talking, it's more New York talking, but I'm told the Sicilian style
cooked.
It is cooked, yeah. So
I mean, that is. I mean, and the only person I've ever seen get passionate to the point of willing to throw fists about this is Gio at Luigi's. He's like, Sicilian, the sauce has got to be cooked, otherwise it's not. You know, like he gets really, you know, he'll get his knickers in a bunch over that. I mean, I don't care if it tastes good. You know, that's my ultimate litmus test. But yeah, I think traditionally it was supposed to be done that way. Why, I don't know. And I'm certainly not gonna, you know, like, look down my nose or turn away a Sicilian just because it's got non-cooked sauce. And I mean, maybe I shouldn't divulge this, but when I do Sicilians, if I'm being lazy, I'll use the same sauce that I use for other, which is just a raw sauce. It works perfectly okay. So, you know, there's multiple ways to skin that cat. But no, the reason I was asking is because with the Chicagoans and the whole like cheese and top thing, if they did a slightly reduced sauce but laid it on a bit thicker under the cheese, potentially that would work because there's less of a moisture factor, but there would be more volume of actual like sugo there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I know for the deep dish they do uncooked sauce, so it's just crushed.
Well, that's because it's sitting on the top
and
and getting blood. I mean, how long does the deep dish cook for? Like 3 hours?
3 hours, Tom. Yeah, 3 hours. Throw shade.
Yeah.
Try to be
like a roast.
Chicago.
Yeah.
No, it can vary, but it's typically 25 to 35 minutes, depending on how crowded the
But that's
oven
that's
is.
a long cook
Oh, the
time.
stuff can get up to
Um,
45. So yeah, you're going to be down at that table pounding something
yeah, yeah.
until your pie hits the
Yeah,
table.
I remember people before Emmett's and Grove opened, and it was just the little kind of super romantic hole in the wall spot in Soho.
Hmm.
You'd get people going there for the first time, and they'd get a bit antsy, like, where's my pizza? Where's my pizza? It's like, this isn't, this isn't a New York style pizza. This isn't a Neapolitan pizza. You're not talking, like 2 minutes to 5 minutes. This is it's a serious operation. There's kind of like a penny drop moment when the thing would come out. They'd be like, "Oh, now I know why it took long." But yeah, it's not 1, 2, 3, and then you're done.
Right. And this gets into there is people who argue that you should be par baking those things, which would reduce the overall time that you would have to wait for it, and arguably solve the problem of a potential gum line on it. But now we're far away from Gordon Ramsay, aren't we? We're talking
Very
gum
very far away
lines
from,
and
yeah.
Gordon Ramsay. So,
I and to that point, yeah, his pizzas are no stranger to gum lines.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So, how would
No,
you
I mean, like,
describe his pies?
Um, nondescript. They're kind of trying to do something American-ish. It's an American style pizza. It's not New York. It's not New Haven. It's not Chicago thin. It's just a kind of nondescript U.S. style of pizza. And it's like I said, it's inoffensive.
Is it hand
Um,
tossed? Is it in a gas oven?
it's
Is it
hand tossed. I think it's in a gas oven. Don't quote.
sauce on
I
top?
haven't. No, it's the toppings look more like a kind of, again, like a Neapolitan and a New York had a love child, that kind of thing. Like, then it's not kind of mountains of fresh mozzarella and just a tiny, or like a alhambra, with a tiny bit of sauce or whatever. But it's definitely American more than it. It's not Neapolitan.
And it's not pan.
No, no, no. They serve it by the slice. It's a round,
Oh,
yeah.
and does he ever show up, or is it just strictly name only on that board?
That I cannot attest to. I've only been there once, and it was because someone was having a kids' party there. And they also have this very cunning trick where they bring you, so it's bottomless pizza. Like, you pay, I think,
Ah,
15 quid, and you get as many slices as you want. But it's not like, here's my 15 quid, can I have 20 slices? It's, here's my 15 quid, we'll bring you a slice, then we'll wait about 6 minutes, then we'll bring you another slice, then so by the third or fourth, your stomach has
you're
kind of
tired, yeah.
started to, yeah. Whereas if they just want, again and again and again and again, you could do a lot of damage. So they are cunning. I'll say this about Gordon Ramsay: he knows how to run a restaurant. He knows what he's doing with the kind of economic side of things. The actual pizza quality could be a lot better, but it could also be worse. Could
Is there
also be
any sort of
worse.
exotic chefy toppings on it, or it's just the usual stuff?
I just had the usual stuff. I'm assuming there's probably this is not exotic, but there'll probably be a Hawaiian-y thing, with pineapple, because it's 2023 and pineapple has to be everywhere. Not that there's any issue with pineapple, just to clarify. But yeah, I didn't see anything particularly exotic. But I'm boring, so I only ever go for the margarita or maybe pepperoni if that's there. But yeah, it's if it opens in the States, it's worth having a look at. But on that note, I think we probably got to wrap up, buddy.
Oh no.
Yeah, gutted, absolutely heartbroken at that, aren't you? I would tee up what we have next week, but I'm not exactly sure whose show it is next week, because it's Thanksgiving and people are kind of on holidays and stuff like that. So yeah, tune in next week to see what we have. It'll be as big a surprise to us as it will be to you. Yeah, okay, guys, that just about does it. If you enjoyed the show, give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We are also available on the various podcast platforms, and you can find us on TikTok and Instagram under the handle I Need Pizza Club, or one word. Cool. All right. thanks, Peter. Thanks for keeping me company.
See you, Tom.
And see you next week. Everyone have a good weekend.